I was standing in the fitting room of the Banana Republic in downtown Chicago, staring at my reflection in the mirror, when everything fell apart. The shirt I was trying on felt like a noose around my neck, a symbol of the life I was supposed to lead, but could no longer pretend to want. My breathing became shallow, my hands shook, and tears started streaming down my face as the truth I had buried for years surfaced in a wave of panic. The door opened suddenly and a young employee stepped in. "Sir, are you okay?" I heard noises. He stopped when he saw me. I expected him to back out embarrassed or call for help, but instead he closed the door gently behind him and knelt to my level on the small bench. "Hey, take deep breaths with me. I'm Ryan. I've seen that look before. It's going to be okay." In that moment, his calm voice and kind eyes broke through the wall I had built. I collapsed into sobs and told him everything in a rush. The pressure from my conservative family back in Indiana, the fake dates with women my parents pushed on me, the constant fear that one wrong move would expose me and destroy the life they had planned. Ryan listened without judgment. When I finished, he shared his own story quietly. He had come out at 19 in a small Wisconsin town. His father had not spoken to him for 2 years. His mother had cried for months, but he had found peace by choosing honesty over approval. We talked for nearly an hour in that small fitting room. Customers came and went outside, but Ryan stayed. By the time I left the store with the shirt I did not even want, I had his phone number saved and a feeling I had not known in years. The feeling of being truly seen. That evening in my apartment, I stared at the message he sent. "Hey Ethan, just checking in. Hope the rest of your day is better. Coffee sometime if you want to talk more, no pressure." I replied yes before I could overthink it. The next afternoon we met at a quiet cafe near Millennium Park. Ryan wore a simple gray hoodie and jeans. His smile was easy and warm. We sat for hours as the city moved around us. He told me about his job at Banana Republic. It paid the bills while he took night classes for a business degree. He spoke about the relief of living openly even when it meant losing people. I told him about my job as an accountant in a downtown firm, the expectations that came with it, and the way my parents still called every Sunday to ask if I had met a nice Christian girl yet. The conversation flowed naturally. For the first time, I did not feel the need to edit my words or hide parts of myself. As the sun began to set over the lake, Ryan looked at me seriously. "You do not have to figure everything out today, Ethan. But you deserve to live as the person you actually are, not the version everyone else wants." His hand brushed mine across the table for just a second. That small touch sent a wave of warmth through me that I could not ignore. Over the following weeks, our meetings became the highlight of my days. We walked along the lakefront path talking about books, movies, and the small details of our lives. Ryan had a quiet strength that made me feel safe. He never pushed, but his presence made the lies I had been living feel heavier. One evening after a long day at work, I called him. "Can I see you?" I asked. He came over to my apartment. We sat on the couch talking until late into the night. When he left, he pulled me into a hug that lingered. In his arms, I felt something I had spent years denying. The desire to be close to another man without shame. The secret world we were building felt beautiful but fragile. My parents had already booked tickets for a visit in a few weeks. They expected updates on my dating life and hints about settling down. The guilt of hiding Ryan started to eat at me, but the fear of losing my family kept me silent. Ryan noticed my distraction during our next walk. "What is weighing on you?" he asked gently. I told him about the upcoming visit. He nodded with understanding in his eyes. "I will be here whatever you decide. But remember, this is your life, Ethan. You only get one." His words stayed with me long after he left. As the days passed, the bond between us grew deeper. We shared laughs over silly stories from our childhoods and quiet moments where no words were needed. Ryan's kindness was a light I had never known I needed. Yet every time I looked at my phone and saw a message from my mother asking about church or potential girlfriends, the reality crashed back in. I was falling for Ryan. The fitting room crisis had opened a door I could not close, and I had no idea what price I would eventually have to pay for walking through it. The weeks after that first coffee blurred into a series of stolen moments that made my ordinary life feel electric. Ryan and I met whenever our schedules allowed. Sometimes it was a quick lunch near his store. Other times it was a longer evening walk through the city. Each encounter peeled back another layer of the armor I had worn for so long. He had a way of asking questions that made me examine my own thoughts without feeling interrogated. One Saturday we drove out to the Indiana dunes for the day. The lake stretched wide and the sand felt cool under our feet. We walked along the beach talking about the families we came from. Ryan described how his mother had slowly come around after years of therapy and difficult conversations. His father was still distant, but at least they spoke now. "It is not perfect," he said, "but it is real." I told him about growing up in a house where love came with conditions. Church every Sunday. Prayers before meals. The unspoken rule that deviation from the expected path meant disappointment or worse. As the sun dipped lower, Ryan stopped walking and turned to face me. The wind ruffled his hair. "I like you, Ethan. A lot. But I know this is new and scary for you. We can take it as slow as you need." His honesty touched me deeply. In that moment on the beach with the waves crashing nearby, I leaned in and our lips met in a soft kiss that felt like coming home. It was gentle and full of the emotion we had been building. No rush, just truth. After that kiss, everything shifted. The secret felt sweeter, but the weight of hiding grew heavier. At work, I found myself smiling at my desk for no reason. Colleagues noticed I seemed happier. I brushed it off as finally getting enough sleep. Inside, I was terrified and exhilarated at the same time. Ryan became my safe harbor. We cooked simple dinners at my apartment. We watched movies cuddled on the couch. He introduced me to music I had never heard and books that challenged my old beliefs. Every conversation chipped away at the shame I had carried. But the family visit loomed. My parents arrived on a Friday afternoon. I picked them up from the airport and drove them to the hotel I had booked. My mother immediately started asking questions. "Have you been to church here? Any nice girls at your office?" My father was quieter, but I could feel his expectations in every glance. That night I had dinner with them and lied through my teeth about a woman I had gone on a few dates with. The words tasted like ash. The next day Ryan texted to see how I was doing. I could not bring myself to reply right away. The contrast between the freedom I felt with him and the performance I was putting on for my parents tore at me. When I finally met him later that evening in a park near my place, I was quiet. He took my hand. "You do not have to tell them yet. But do not disappear on me, okay?" His understanding only made the guilt sharper. The visit continued with more pressure. My mother wanted to meet the fictional woman I had mentioned. I made excuses. My father talked about how proud he was of the stable life I had built and how important it was to find a good wife and start a family. Each comment felt like a chain tightening around my chest. By the time they left, I was exhausted. The moment their plane took off, I called Ryan. He came over immediately. We sat on the floor of my living room and I cried while he held me. "I hate lying to them," I whispered. "But I am terrified of what happens if I stop." Ryan stroked my back. "I know. I lived that terror. The choice is yours, but you are not alone anymore." That night we stayed up talking about the future. He shared his dreams of opening his own small business one day. I admitted I had always wanted to travel more, but had put it off to meet family expectations. The conversation felt like building something real. Yet the fear of losing my parents' love hung over every word. As the days turned into another month, our relationship deepened further. We celebrated small milestones. The first time I introduced him to a close coworker as a friend. The first weekend we spent entirely together. Each step forward brought joy but also new questions. What would my friends from Indiana say? How long could I keep this hidden before it exploded? Ryan remained patient, but I could see the strain it put on him too. He wanted a partner who could stand openly beside him. One evening after a beautiful day together, he looked at me seriously. "I am falling in love with you, Ethan. But I need to know if you can ever be out with me. Not today. Not next month. But someday." His words hung in the air. I wanted to promise him the world. Instead, I pulled him close and whispered that I was trying. The kiss that followed was filled with both hope and uncertainty. The love growing between us was real. But the world outside our private moments was still full of judgment and expectation. I knew the calm we enjoyed could not last forever. The storm was coming. The pressure built slowly at first, then all at once. Work became busier with a major audit season. My parents called more frequently, asking about my social life. Ryan and I continued seeing each other, but the secrecy started to create small cracks. He never complained, but I could sense his frustration when I hesitated to hold his hand in public or when I changed plans at the last minute to avoid being seen. One weekend, my best friend from high school, Mark, came to Chicago for a conference. We had stayed close over the years. He was the one person from home who knew parts of me that others did not. Or so I thought. We met for drinks at a sports bar. After a few beers, he asked directly, "You seem different, man. Happier but also distracted. Is there someone?" I froze. The lie came out automatically. "Just busy with work." Mark did not push, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. The next day, Ryan and I had plans for a low-key dinner. I was late because Mark had wanted to extend our hangout. When I finally arrived, Ryan was quiet. "Everything okay?" he asked. I told him about Mark. Ryan nodded, but the conversation felt strained. Later that night, he said, "I get that this is hard for you. But every time you hide me, it feels like you are ashamed." His words stung because they were true. I apologized and promised I was working on it. We made love that night with a tenderness that masked the growing tension. My parents announced another visit. This time they wanted to stay longer and meet my friends. The idea terrified me. Ryan suggested I introduce him as a coworker. It was a compromise, but it felt like another lie. The weekend they arrived, I was a nervous wreck. We had dinner together at a nice restaurant. Ryan was charming and polite. My mother liked him immediately. My father asked about his family and career. For a few hours it felt almost normal. But then my mother pulled me aside. "He seems like a good friend. But you need to find a wife, Ethan. Time is passing." Her words landed like a punch. Later that night, after my parents went back to the hotel, Ryan and I argued for the first time. "I cannot keep being your secret friend," he said. "It hurts too much." I tried to explain the fear of losing my family. He understood but asked if I was willing to lose him instead. We went to bed angry and hurt. The visit ended with more pressure. My parents left brochures from their church about family values. My mother cried on the phone the next day, saying she worried I was lonely. The guilt was crushing. At work, I made a mistake on a report because my mind was elsewhere. My boss noticed and warned me to focus. Ryan gave me space, but the distance between us grew. One evening, he canceled our plans, saying he needed time to think. I spent that night alone, replaying every conversation. The love I felt for Ryan was undeniable. But the fear of disappointing my family, the loss of the only support system I had ever known, paralyzed me. The next morning, I went to the Banana Republic during his shift. He looked surprised to see me. In a quiet corner of the store, I told him I was sorry. "I am trying, Ryan. Please do not give up on me." He pulled me into a quick hug. "I am not giving up. But you have to meet me halfway." That conversation gave me hope, but the cracks remained. Mark texted me a few days later. "Saw you with that guy at the restaurant. He your boyfriend?" The message sent panic through me. I replied vaguely. The secret was starting to slip. Ryan and I tried to rebuild. We took a short trip to a cabin up north. For 2 days we talked, laughed, and reconnected. On the last night he said, "I love you, Ethan. But love needs room to breathe." His words echoed in my mind on the drive home. Back in Chicago, the tension at work increased. A colleague mentioned seeing me with Ryan and asked if we were dating. I denied it too quickly. The lie felt heavier than ever. My parents called again, pushing for me to come home for the holidays and bring a date. The walls were closing in. The love that had started in that fitting room was now caught between my heart and the world that demanded I choose. The betrayal came from the place I least expected. Mark had always been the friend I trusted most. When he called one evening, his voice was hesitant. "Look, man, I did not mean to, but I mentioned to your sister that I saw you with Ryan." She kept asking. "I am sorry." My blood ran cold. My sister Sarah had always been close to my parents. Within hours, my mother was on the phone in tears. "Is it true, Ethan? Are you with a man?" The conversation was a blur of accusations, disappointment, and scripture quotes. My father got on the line and said quietly, "We raised you better than this." I hung up shaking. Ryan was at my apartment when it happened. I told him everything. His face went pale. "This is what I was afraid of," he said. We argued again. He wanted me to stand up for us. I wanted time to process. The fight ended with him leaving, saying he needed air. That night I lay awake wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. The next days were hell. My parents demanded I come home immediately. When I refused, they threatened to cut off the small financial help they still provided for my student loans. Sarah called crying, saying the family was in turmoil. Friends from church reached out with concerned messages that felt like judgment. At work, rumors started. Someone had overheard a conversation. My boss pulled me aside and said the firm valued professionalism and personal matters should stay personal. Ryan tried to support me, but the strain showed. "I cannot be the reason you lose everything," he said one night. "But I also cannot be hidden forever." We broke up in the middle of a tearful conversation. He left my apartment with the quiet finality that broke my heart. The days that followed were empty. I went through the motions at work. I avoided calls from home. The love that had once felt like salvation now felt like the source of all my pain. I hit rock bottom one rainy evening. Sitting in the same cafe where Ryan and I had our first real talk, I broke down. The barista asked if I was okay. I left without answering. Walking the streets, I replayed every choice. Had I been selfish for wanting this love? Had I been cruel to Ryan by dragging him into my closet? The moral weight pressed down. On one side was the family that had raised me. On the other was the man who had shown me what it meant to be authentic. A week after the breakup, Ryan texted, "I miss you, but I need to know if you are ready to fight for us." I did not reply right away. Instead, I drove to Indiana for a tense weekend with my family. The conversations were painful. My father barely looked at me. My mother prayed over me at dinner. Sarah tried to mediate, but her own confusion showed. I left feeling more lost than when I arrived. Back in Chicago, I went to the Banana Republic. Ryan was working. When he saw me, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and caution. We stepped outside. "I am scared," I admitted. "But losing you scares me more." He took my hand right there on the sidewalk. "Then we face it together. No more hiding." The decision felt both right and terrifying. The price was already high. Family relationships were damaged. My social circle had shrunk. But for the first time, I chose myself and the man I loved. The reconciliation brought relief but not peace. Ryan and I moved slowly, rebuilding trust. We attended a support group for LGBTQ people with conservative families. The stories we heard mirrored our own and made us feel less alone. Yet the consequences of coming out continued to unfold. My parents stopped sending money. I picked up extra freelance work to cover the gap. Some friends from home distanced themselves. One longtime buddy sent a long message saying he loved me but could not support that lifestyle. Ryan had his own struggles. His ex-boyfriend reappeared briefly, causing jealousy and old wounds to surface. We navigated those conversations with honesty that strengthened us. One night, Ryan opened up about the betrayal he had experienced years earlier when a previous partner had chosen family approval over their relationship. "I cannot go through that again," he said. I promised him I would not repeat that mistake. Work became difficult. A client learned about my personal life through church connections and pulled their account. My boss was understanding, but the atmosphere changed. I started looking for new opportunities. Through it all, Ryan was my rock. We cooked meals together, talked late into the night, and supported each other through the hard days. The love between us matured. It was no longer just the thrill of discovery, but a steady commitment forged in fire. Yet the internal conflict remained. Nights when I lay awake wondering if I had made the right choice. The pain I had caused my family weighed heavily. My mother sent letters filled with scripture and pleas to repent. Each one hurt. Ryan encouraged me to write back with honesty but compassion. The responses I sent were some of the hardest things I had ever written. A major turning point came when my sister Sarah visited Chicago alone. We met in a park. She listened as I explained my journey. To my surprise, she admitted she had been questioning some of the teachings we grew up with. "I do not understand everything," she said, "but I see how happy you are with Ryan. I want to try to accept it." Her words gave me the first real hope that not all bridges were burned. Ryan and I celebrated small victories. The first holiday we spent together as a couple. The day I got a better job offer. Each moment reminded us why we had fought so hard. But the cost was real. Family gatherings I was no longer invited to. Old friends who no longer called. The moral dilemma never fully disappeared. Was my happiness worth their pain? Was their disapproval worth my authenticity? Through therapy, I began to untangle the guilt. The counselor helped me see that love was not a betrayal of family but an expression of truth. Ryan and I grew closer. We talked about the future, moving in together, building a life that reflected both of us. The awakening was gradual but powerful. I was no longer the man who panicked in a fitting room. I was someone learning to stand in his truth even when the world pushed back. The final confrontation came during the holidays. My parents agreed to meet Ryan and me for dinner in a neutral city halfway between Chicago and home. The evening was tense. My father was polite but distant. My mother struggled to make eye contact with Ryan. We spoke honestly about our relationship, our values, and the love we shared. My parents listened, but their discomfort was clear. At the end of the meal, my father said, "We love you, son. But we cannot pretend this is okay with us." The words hurt, but they were honest. We parted with awkward hugs and promises to stay in touch. On the drive home, Ryan held my hand. "You did good," he said quietly. The tears came then. Not just for the loss, but for the freedom of no longer hiding. In the months that followed, the relationships evolved slowly. Sarah visited more often and even met Ryan for coffee. My parents sent occasional messages, though the warmth was gone. I accepted that full reconciliation might take years or might never come. The price had been high, but the life I was building with Ryan felt authentic in a way nothing else ever had. We moved into a small apartment together. The days filled with shared routines, laughter, and the quiet strength of two people who had chosen each other against the odds. Ryan finished his degree and started working toward his business dreams. I thrived in my new job where I could be open about my life. The social prejudice we faced occasionally still stung, but it no longer defined us. Looking back at the fitting room crisis that started everything, I see the chain of decisions that led us here. The moments of fear, the acts of courage, the betrayals, and the awakenings. Each character paid a price. My family lost the version of me they expected. Ryan risked his heart on someone still in the closet. I lost the comfort of denial and the approval I had always sought. The love we found was worth the struggle. It taught me that authenticity is not selfish but necessary. Yet the question remains for anyone facing similar crossroads. Was it right to choose this love and this truth even though it fractured my family and brought real pain? Or should I have sacrificed my happiness to preserve the peace and expectations of the world I came from? What do you think was the right choice?